This year's EICMA saw loads of awesome new motorcycles announced for the 2023 model year, and so here are the 10 best of the show as voted for by my subscribers. Now we'll start at number 10, and these first few bikes get less than 5% of the votes, so we'll rapid fire through them. First up, we've got the Indian FTR. In fact, the whole lineup got a refresh. The rudiments are the same, so the big 1200cc V-twin that makes plenty of power at 120 horses, and you still get the Sachs suspension, the Brembo brakes, and the same steel trellis frame. But there's a new TFT display on 3 of the models, which I think looks a lot more in keeping with the styling of the rest of the bike than the rectangular dash that it replaces. There are also tweaks to the exhaust system, the brakes, and the clutch, but perhaps the biggest change is the new styling, with bold color and graphics for the base model, and then the new FTR Sport, which replaces the FTRS, which again gets a much more punchy look. Very nice indeed. Next up, the Ducati Scrambler lineup, which again gets a new look with slightly more chiseled and modern looking bodywork than the previous generation. At first, I wasn't quite sure about it, but seeing the bike in the flesh at the show, it really does look pretty smart, and you've also got loads of color choices for the new model year. Now, like the FTR, the basics of the bike, so the engine, the suspension, and braking are all pretty much the same, but it does get a lighter frame with 4 kilograms shed off the total weight, and electronically, it's taken a massive leap forward. So you now get a ride-by-wire throttle that means it gets 2 riding modes of road and rain, and then this new TFT display which looks really punchy and gives the phone connectivity options which are becoming increasingly common on bikes of all different price points. It's perhaps just a bit of a shame that they didn't do it like the FTR with a round TFT display that probably better suits the overall feel and aesthetic of the Scrambler lineup. I do like, however, the new full throttle edition which looks pretty sporty, and also the updated night shift with a slightly more classic vibe. Now next up, we've got the Diablo V4, also from Ducati, and this was announced a few weeks back to replace the V-twin powered Diablo 1260. Now this thing is probably the ultimate power cruiser because of course it makes plenty of power with that MotoGP derived V4 engine, but also it's way lighter than any other full capacity cruiser on the market, and the result ought to be pretty spectacular on the road. As for the looks though, well, this bike was absolutely crowded at the show, so much so that I couldn't really get near it to get any video footage, so clearly there's an audience that does appreciate it, but personally I don't think it's quite as nice looking as the previous Diablo with the steel trellis frame. Maybe I'm nitpicking though, Ducati have created something that looks like an absolute beast, and for that they should be applauded. Now at the other end of the pricing and power spectrum, and yet still getting a handful more votes, it's the Honda CL500 Scrambler. Basically it's a semi-retro version of their 500 twin platform that includes the Rebel 500, CB500X, and CBR 500R. So it's a proven little engine, not massively powerful, but enough for a bit of fun on the road, and it'll be super frugal too. I've ridden those other bikes and they're great on fuel and not massively expensive to buy either. So that's what I think has made this bike so popular amongst my subscribers, the fact that it's a new bike that looks kind of interesting, but it's also attainable. And also I think they've done a decent job of the looks. I mean, they won't be for everyone, and the exhaust is admittedly a bit on the large side, but within the bounds of what's possible for Honda's design style, I think it works pretty well. Just edging it though, we've got the new Street Triple lineup announced by Triumph in the lead up to the show, and they were indeed there on the stand for all to see. Across the lineup, we've got more power and more tech, plus some slightly revised visuals and color choices which bring it bang up to date. But more than that, I think it's the new Moto 2 limited edition that earns it the votes here. Just 765 of each of the 2 colors will be produced worldwide, and it gets all the makings of a Moto 2 bike for the road. So top spec Öhlins suspension, clip-on bars for a more racy position, and a flashy Triumph Racing inspired paint job that really does pack a punch. Very cool, and I look forward to testing out the new Street Triple RS in the new year. Now before we get on to the next ones, I just want to say a massive thank you to Cardo for sponsoring this video. We spent some time with the team there at EICMA and heard all about their awesome new products. You see, I've been using their flagship product, the PackTalk Edge, which in my opinion is the best comms unit on the market. It's absolutely full of features, my favorite of which being the mesh connectivity system. That enables you to pair up to 15 riders at a time, spanning up to a mile between each rider, and if somebody does drop off the group, there's no need to repair manually, it'll just self-heal. It's a brilliant product, but I do appreciate that the price point isn't achievable for everybody, and so that's why I'm excited to see that they've they've just announced the Pack Talk Neo. It gets a lot, if not all of the same capabilities, but at a much more aggressive price point, which I think will open it up to more riders as an option. I'd thoroughly recommend heading to the link in the description where you can get all the details, and there's also a discount code down there specifically for my viewers. So once again, a massive thanks to Cardo for their support. Now into the top 5 we go, and with 9% of the votes, we've got the new Suzuki VStrom 800DE. Now the big deal here is that they built a new parallel twin engine, and I guess over the next year or two this will phase out the old V-twin powered VStrom 650. Now people really love that bike, it's got a great engine, but it was getting a little long in the tooth, and so this new engine offers more peak power at 82 horses, more torque at 78 Nm, and yet with a 270-degree crank it should give off a similar vibe to the old V-twin. Plus elsewhere it's all new, with a more off-road biased chassis package that sits taller and gets a 21-inch front wheel, so it ought to be a lot better when you do straight off tarmac. Electronics also get a massive boost, with a TFT dash through which you can manage a bunch of riding modes and rider aids. No mention of any phone connectivity though, which is either a big deal or not. Some riders seem to like those features, others not so much, but I do think the omission of cruise control, especially on a bike like this which could be used as an adventure tourer, will be a more common complaint. Still, it looks pretty cool, it's a big leap forward, and potentially it'll be quite aggressively priced in typical Suzuki fashion, so I'll definitely be looking forward to trying this one out. At the same time, they've used the same platform to announce a brand new middleweight sporty naked called the GSX8S. Now the two bikes are pretty similar, so the same parallel twin and a lot of the same electronics, but of course this one is much lower slung, much lighter, and it gets some more sporty equipment like the radially mounted 4-pop brakes. In isolation, it looks pretty decent, but the real test will be when it goes head-to-head with Honda's new Hornet when both bikes hit dealers next year. That bike gets most of the same features, more power, and yet it comes in at just £6,999 at launch. Sure, the Suzuki is probably the better looking of the two, but will they be able to get anywhere near that super aggressive price point? I guess we'll find out soon. Now, in the same way that Suzuki announced a naked and an adventure bike off the same parallel twin platform, so did Honda with the Hornet, and then this, the new Transalp. It's a famous name, previously being their super popular middleweight adventurer, so will this new 2023 version be able to live up to the name? Well, the engine looks impressive, making 90 horsepower peak, which is almost 10 more than the Suzuki. The chassis looks decent too, and while the electronics are similar, it does get some phone connectivity features. Sadly though, not the cruise control that I would have loved to have seen on both bikes. Price is still TBC for this one too, but I believe it'll be around the 10 grand mark, with the Tenere 700 from Yamaha being the bike to beat in this segment, and that's also a similar price. The Tenere is a very simple machine with not much in the way of tech and features, but it is incredible to ride off-road, and so although the Suzuki and the Honda will have the edge on the gizmos, they'll really have to prove themselves out on the trail to genuinely nick some sales. Now we're getting to the sharp end of this list here, and at number 2 we've got an absolute stunner. It's the Superveloce 1000 from MV Augusta. A lot of the bikes we've just talked about are in that 7 to 10 grand price bracket, but this thing is just pure Italian superbike exotica. It basically takes the styling ethos of their Superveloce 800, which is a sort of neo-retro sports bike, and then smashes it together with their 208 horsepower super naked, the Brutale 1000 RR. The result is something that has all the latest performance equipment and electronics, but in this distinctive MV Augusta styling package that I think is, for me, one of the best looking bikes that I've seen in recent memory. It's one of those bikes that looks super fast just standing still, and it's got all of the visual drama that you'd expect from a true piece of motorcycle art. The price though, well, no doubt this one's going to be up in that 40 or 50 grand price bracket, but still, there's something to admire from the armchair. Bravo to MV Augusta. So to bring us back down to earth in number 1 spot, we've got the always affordable Royal Enfield with their new 650 cruiser, the Super Meteor. Now, it's a brilliant engine which isn't necessarily the most powerful, but it has a nice usable amount of power and torque and a genuinely lovable character. And while we've already had it in the Retro Interceptor and the more cafe racer style Continental GT, this is a more stretched out, laid back application that could even be used for a bit of distance and touring with the right accessories. What really impressed me with this bike when I saw it in the flesh at the show though was the attention to detail around the headlight and triple clamps, and the paintwork looked really nice too. Enfield really seemed to be improving that build quality and feel at a rapid rate, and this is just another example of that with what I think is their most premium looking bike to date. No price yet on this one either, but I'd expect it to be around the 7 to 8 grand mark, a little more than the other 650s, but it is a bigger bike with more metal to it, and yet still that should keep it well below the majority of other cruisers on the market. As always, a massive thanks for watching. If you missed any of our full EICMA videos from the show, then you can find them in this playlist below. And that's pretty much a wrap for EICMA this year, but fear not, we've got Motorcycle Live in a week or so here in the UK, from which we'll be bringing you all of the best bikes from the show. So if you're already a subscriber, then simply stay tuned. But if you're new here and you want to see those videos as soon as they go live, then hit subscribe and we'll see you then.